How you doing, everyone? It's your main man, Sugar Bear here. Well, it's time to share the Ray Liotta story and how I got to his house, not once but twice, unannounced, and I come face to face with him, and how I got Andy Garcia also to read my screenplay. And so let me just fill in some blanks. In 1986, when I moved out here for the first time, one of my roommates, his name is Hugh Grew. He is a Facebook friend of mine, still a dear friend of mine for all these years. Was an aspiring screenwriter, very talented guy, musician also. He's an Emmy Award winner, and I happened to hold on to one of the screenplays. So when I came back to LA for my second tour of duty in 1993, this is my fourth tour. I got 20-something years out here. So I came back in 93, I was bored, and I wanted to just pass the time, and I decided I'll write a screenplay of my own. I had a story I kind of concocted, and no writing experience. I had no computer. It was 1993. Who had computers? I didn't. And I decided to put Hugh's screenplay next to me, and I would just follow the format and put my story on legal pad, 3 legal pads, the long ones, handwritten, my story, my screenplay. I did that, and when I was done, I took it to a friend of mine by the name of Frank Lieberman, very well-respected publicist, and he was a publicist of Tony Danza's, who I became friends with in the 80s when I first came to LA through Gilda La Rosa, Carmen and Denise's mother. That's a whole nother story. But I took it to Frank. Frank read it, and after he read it, about a month later or so, he liked the story, and he said to me, Al, why don't you put this in the screenplay format, and I'll give it to Tony Danza and see what Tony wants to do with it. Tony had a production company, Katie Face production company. That happened. Nothing happened with it. He gave it to Tony. Tony wasn't interested. And Frank just was basically saying, you have to try to get a literary agent and try to hustle the screenplay around. So, being a go-getter and being a guy that takes chances, I live on the edge. I decided, because I had a literary agent, that I would have to just hustle it. And to me, that meant if I had to go knock on doors of movie stars, I was going to do it. What I got to lose? So I find out where Ray Liotta lived. And he lived in North Hollywood, right down the street from NBC Studios, in a modest home, like you could walk up to a nice home in Jersey. And I went there, and I went every day for about a week or two, just sitting in the car, waiting to see if I could find him walking in or out of his house, and it just didn't happen. There was no signs of life. And one night I'm watching Jay Leno, the Jay Leno show, and he would normally announce who was going to be on his show the next week. And he announces that Ray Liotta was going to be one of his guests. So I decide that I go back to Ray's house, and it's a beautiful day, and I'm sitting in the car, and it's getting a little dusk out, 4 or 5 o'clock on a September day. And I decided to go get something to eat. And when I come back, I finally see signs of life in his house, with sprinklers on, the lights on. So I walk up to his door with no screenplay in hand, and he had a front door, and he had a little window right next to his door. And I hear him say, "Who is it?" And I know the voice, and I see him peek through the blind. And what am I going to say to a movie star when he says, "Who is it?" He ain't going to know me. So I say, "Ray, listen, my name's Al. I'm a writer. I have a screenplay." As soon as he heard that, he was basically, "Listen, can you please leave? I don't do this in my home. My family's here. You have to go through my agent." And I interrupted him, and I said, "I tried going through your agent. and I got no response. And he was like, well, I'm very sorry. Please leave. And obviously I had to get off the property because once he tells me to leave, I got to leave. So I walk to my car and I get a paper and pen and I write a little note. And on the note, I tell him, listen, I'm friends with Frank Lieberman, Tony Danza. Don't vouch for me. I'm only up and up. I'm just trying to get a screenplay read by you. And I walked back to the house, and it wasn't a mailbox on the lawn. It was a mail slot attached to his house. You put it right in. And he watched me. I seen him through the blinds, watch me put the note in there. So I leave, I get in my car, and I go to a payphone. The first thing I do is I call Frank Lieberman. And Frank Lieberman always gave me carte blanche to use his name. And I call him up and I tell him what happened. And I asked him, I said, Frank, can you do me a favor and call Ray Liotta's agent and let the agent know that I'm friends with you and it was cool and I was just trying to get a screenplay to Ray. He said he would do it, and I know he did it. And days went by, a few days, and I would call Frank, asked if he got a phone call from the agent. His name was Nick Reseda. Well, a week went by, 10 days went by, and Frank Lieberman never got a return phone call from the agent. So one day I'm in Hollywood, out Post Drive. I knew where Penny Marshall lived. I was looking for Penny Marshall. So I had my balls twisted, and I decided on this beautiful afternoon that I was going to go back to Ray Liotta's house. And I walk up to the door with no screenplay in hand again. And he answers the door and he comes out. And he comes out in the white sweatpants, white t-shirt, bare feet, his hair messed up. And he gets in my face and it went something like this. What the fuck did I tell you? Did I fucking tell you you don't come to my fucking house? This is where I live. I don't do business in my house. Did I fucking tell you? And he's giving me the riot act. And I'm giggling inside. And here's a movie star just giving me the riot act. And at first, I'm thinking, am I going to have to go to blows with him? I mean, I shouldn't be on his property, but he's in my face. So at one point, I'm letting him give it to me. And when I find the right time that I stop him, I go, Ray, I back off. I go, Ray, come on, man. I said, I don't like being here no more than you do. I said, I put the note in your door. I told you I'm friends with Frank Lieberman and Tony. It'll vouch for me. And all of a sudden, I said to him, and this was a reality check. This was such a beautiful thing that happened from here on in. I go, Ray, come on, man. You were once in my shoes. Come on. He kind of like took a breath, and I guess it felt like I gave him a reality check. And he steps back, but with an attitude, he goes, all right, go get your screenplay. Okay? And when he says that, I get the feeling that, like, he's trying to get me off this property, go get the screenplay, and he'll get rid of me. Well, man, I step back, and I look him dead in the eye. And my right hand to God, I say to him, Ray, I don't think I want to give it to you with that attitude. Well, he looked at me like I was a fucking crackpot. And he stepped back again, took a breath, and he goes, no, Al, I'm serious. Real gentle now, he says, go get your screenplay, come back, we'll sit down, we'll talk about it. Oh, my God. I said, okay. I turn around, I walk in my car 20 yards away. I'm laughing inside. I'm saying, oh, my God, this is unbelievable. So I get my screenplay. I come back. I sit on a nice little wooden bench. Only two of us can fit. He's right next to me. He's flipping through the pages, and he says, all right, tell me about it. So I go in, and we have this little conversation. I tell him why I wrote it, how I wrote it. And he says to me, all right, I'll read it. Then I say to him, Ray, you got to promise me one thing. He looks at me again and says, what now? I say to him, Ray, you got to promise me you read it. You know, because a lot of actors don't get a screenplay and they'll give it to the assistant in the office or the manager and they'll read it. I say, Ray, you promise me you'll read it so I can get some feedback from you? I'm a first-time writer. And he shook his head and he goes, I'll tell you what, I promise. He says, I promise you I read it, but I can't promise you when or how long it's going to take me to finish it, to read it. I look at him, I stick out my hand, and I say, I got all my life, right? He's like, by this time, he's like, this fucking guy's nuts. So he shakes my hand, he says, okay. And I tell him, I'm sorry for what occurred, I'm sorry, what happened at the house, and I thank him and I leave. The next morning, I got a phone call, and it's a guy. Yeah, is this Al Barberi? I said, yes. He said, "This is the guy who went to Ray's house last night?" I said, yeah. Yesterday, I said, yeah. He says, "This is Ray Liotta's manager. Ray ain't reading anything until you come up here and sign a waiver form, consent to read it." Because my screenplay, as all of you know, it's unsolicited material, and without an agent, you really can't get your screenplay to movie studios or actors to read it. So he wanted consent for me to give permission to Ray to read it, and I did that. I said, "Well, give me your address. I'll be the first thing in the morning." I went up there, I signed it. Months went by, and I get something in the mail from Ray, his manager or agent, and it was a nice letter. And basically, it wasn't anything Ray was looking for, and it really wasn't right. It was the first time I wrote a screenplay. The story, the writing probably wasn't the best, but about 6 months later, I'm at the Bicycle Casino where I play poker, and Ray's in there. I hear Ray's playing poker in there, and I go up to him. And I tap him on the shoulder, and he's lit. I mean, he must have been drinking. You could tell he's lit. He turns back at me. "Yeah," he says. I went, "Ray, yeah." I said, "Don't you remember me?" He says to me, "Should I?" I said, "Ray, you should remember me. I'm the guy that came to your house with the fucking screenplay," with that silly laughing grin as he has. He says, "Kid, that was good, man. That was good." He goes, "How you doing with that screenplay?" I said, "I'm on my 5th rewrite." And he was like, cool. He goes, just stay with it. You might get lucky with it. And that was the Ray Liotta story. It was insane. You know, it was crazy. And I'm dying. It's 21 years later. I would die to run into him because I know he would never forget it. And it was just crazy. So what happened was, let me see how much time is left on this video. I might have to do a part 2. So let me cut this off. Let me do another video, and I'll tell you about the Andy Garcia and Kurt Russell house, how I got to them. All right.